I introduced myself. That's for the recording. And now I will share a video introducing the Claremont Eco Forum.
Welcome to the 16th Claremont International Forum on Ecological Civilization and the 5th Youth Forum on Ecological Civilization. The Claremont Eco Forum is a prestigious annual event that began in 2006. It stands as the earliest and largest forum dedicated to ecological civilization in the Western world. Our mission is to gather innovative academics, nonprofit leaders, prominent activists, and governmental officials from both China and other nations. Together, we aim to explore new worldviews, modes of thinking, developmental models, approaches to organic farming, and educational paradigms in the pursuit of transitioning towards an ecological civilization. Over the years, thousands of individuals from around the globe have participated in these forums, fostering a significant impact. Media's coverage, such as People's Daily, One News, International Daily,
Glacier Love,
and U.S. Times, has helped to disseminate the forum's objectives. Notably, the 15th Claremont Eco Forum in 2022 reached approximately 12 million views, particularly in China, through various traditional and social media channels. The Claremont Eco Forum was initially organized by the Institute for Postmodern Development of China, IPDC, and the Center for Process Studies, CPS. In recent years, it has gradually received co-sponsorship from esteemed organizations such as the Cobb Institute, CI, the Institute for Ecological Civilization, EcoCiv, the China Biodiversity Conservation and Green Development Foundation, the Budapest Center for Long-Term Sustainability, Hungary, the Overseas Chinese Environmental Engineers and Scientists Association, and the Chinese Ecological Civilization, Research and Promotion Association, among others. We extend a warm welcome to all participants and hope you thoroughly enjoy the forum. May the 16th Claremont Ecological Forum be a resounding success.
Ooh. Okay, so here are some instructions about the simultaneous interpretation feature. So we actually are translating this this session between English and Chinese. So at the bottom of your screen, the bottom of your Zoom window, there should be a place to select either English or Chinese as your preferred language. That is the language that you want to listen to. So if I'm speaking English and you wish I was speaking Chinese, click the Chinese button and you'll hear one of our interpreters say something better than I could have said, but what I hoped I would have said into Chinese. And then if you're, the same holds, but in reverse, if English is your preference and somebody's speaking Chinese. A wonderful feature, so please be sure to select that now. Great. Well, before we move forward and introduce our panel, I have a couple more welcome introductory remarks that I'd like to share with you. And as I do that and get those prepared, I'd like to invite Dr. Mei-Jun Fan to say a few words as well. May, would you like to give your welcome introduction as I pull up the videos?
OK， 大家好，我是樊美君，中美后现代发展研究院的项目主任。此刻，我怀着无比荣幸的情感，代表第16届克莱芒生态文明国际论坛和第5届青年生态论坛的组委会，向大家献上最热烈的欢迎。我坚信，通过本年度论坛上的分享和积极的互动，我们将深化对生态文明的感悟和理解，并将其融入我们的工作和日常生活中。 只要我们能够实现这一目标，我和我的团队为本次论坛所付出的一切努力都将变得非常值得。感谢柯老的光临，感谢诸位的光临，也感谢大家在过去16年来一路长情陪伴与支持。现在我诚挚地邀请美国个人研究中心执行主任安德鲁·施瓦茨博士前来主持本次论坛的开幕式。
Thank you, Dr. Fawn. Well, she's also gone ahead and helped us to acquire a couple of welcome introductory videos from some of our most esteemed colleagues and co-organizers and sponsors. One of them happens to be here in the audience, but rather than put him on the spot and ask him to say something spontaneously, we'll just play his video and listen to his words of welcome from you. Here's a short clip from Dr. John B. Cobb Jr., also claiming to be the world's oldest junior.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 16th Claremont International Forum on Ecological Civilization and the 5th Youth Forum on Ecological Civilization. Today, no topic is more important than ecological civilization. I grew up assuming that civilization was, in all respects, the human achievement most to be celebrated. We really did not regard uncivilized people as fully human. Our task was to bring them the blessings of civilization. Today, civilization has become problematic, as we see that in its present form, it is destroying the ability of the earth to sustain human life. We look back and see that from the beginning, it has been destructive. Before civilization, human beings adapted themselves to nature in ways that allowed nature to continue to flourish. For example, soil increased from century to century. When human beings began to control nature, especially for food production, soil was reduced from century to century. Cities destroyed their natural environments and were abandoned. Today, there is insane talk of abandoning the planet and looking for a home elsewhere. Before civilization, warfare, slavery, male domination of women, and political domination of many by the few were marginal problems. Civilization brought brutal empires into being and economic systems of exploitation. These are culminating in American imperialism and global capitalism. These institutions speed the destruction of healthy society and healthy natural environments. Does this mean that we should celebrate the coming end of civilization? I think not. Civilization has also contributed much to the quality of human life. Also, it has led to an explosion of population. The end of civilization would be the death of most people. We are now using the achievements of civilization to destroy and kill most of the world's human inhabitants. Is there an alternative? Yes. One important part of human civilization, China, has identified it as ecological civilization. An ecological civilization will be very different from any civilization that has existed up until now. It will be a civilization without warfare, slavery, male domination of women, brutal imperialism, and destructive economic systems. There is no other worthwhile goal. Is it possible? Yes. Is it probable? I fear it is not. Even in China, the full radicality of the change involved has not been appreciated. Elsewhere, for the most part, national goals direct energies towards speeding the destruction. Thanks to China, hope remains possible. Optimism does not. Clearly, the topic of this conference is of great importance. Indeed, it is a matter of life and death, not for a few individuals, but for the human species. Thanks to China for at least allowing a serious discussion of the human crisis. A special thank you must go to the organizers and co-sponsors who have made this forum happen. It is not easy to persist for 16 years, but all the hard work is worth it. I wish this year's forum a great success.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cobb, for your wonderful words of wisdom. I should probably give you this time to ask if you have any amendments to your speech that was pre-recorded, but you know, I'm sorry, it's too late. You said it. It's been shared publicly. Now you're committed to it. So I hope you're satisfied with your remarks. No, of course, there's plenty of room for change. Everything changes. Dr. Cobb is one of the world's leading experts on sort of ecological mindsets and the process perspective as an ecological worldview, and sort of ecological civilization as such. And we're so grateful to have him here with us at the ripe age of 98. So thank you for taking the time to join us. In his speech, he also mentioned thanks to other co-sponsoring organizations, and we have a video from the head of one of those right now, Jinfeng Zhao, who is the director of the China Biodiversity Conservation and Green Development Foundation, who's been one of our great supporters over the year. So let me share that video with you. Here we go.
In China, people still remember three major great ancestors, 有火氏, 有巢氏, 神农氏. They made three major steps: fair development, home development, and agricultural development thousands of years ago or tens of thousands of years ago. They lead the transformation from primitive civilization to agricultural civilization. Today, what you are doing are the same or even more vital for human, for the climate issue, for the biodiversity difficulty, for the public health problems, for the 6 massive extinctions, UNFCCC, CBD, CITES, Ramsar. All those conventions are far from enough. People's participation is the only solution for us to sustainably live on the planet. Today, you are not alone. In China, we have over hundreds of community conservation areas. We have hundreds of biodiversity conservation in our neighborhood. We have eco-civilization sites all over China. People starting participate the deep transformation. And let's work together to make a community with shared future for mankind. Let's work together to make a beautiful community for all life on Earth. On behalf of China Biodiversity Conservation and the Green Development Foundation, on behalf of our hundreds of thousands members, volunteers, we thank you, we congratulate you on the 16th International Conference of Deep Transformation for Eco-Civilization. Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Zhao, for your wonderful, encouraging reminder that, yes, we need to work together to build a better world. And indeed, that's what we're here to do. So the Claremont Eco Forum this year is focused on the big topic of deep transformation for ecological civilization. Our 3 days, this is the first day, are broken up into the 3 distinct ways of pursuing that big picture. So today has been about looking sort of inside, right? Examining the inner life of what it means to be human, how we understand the world and our place in it, challenging our mindsets, our worldviews, our paradigms, our self-understanding, all these sorts of things, right? Tapping into the insights of psychology, spirituality, new forms of education, the list goes on. And we had a wonderful session this morning. For those of us in the California time zone, evening for those of us who were in Europe. We had some people from Germany participating, somebody from Rome. So we're going to continue that same theme for this new session here, looking sort of at inner transformation for ecological civilization. Tomorrow will be focused more externally, not separate from, but definitely growing out of and interconnected with that sort of inner transformation, looking at how do we transform society by changing our systems and structures, sort of a deep transformation of the very way that human life is organized. And then the final day being the third day, which is our International Youth Forum on Ecological Civilization, creating a space in addition to this one where young voices are being featured and encouraged to participate, but specifically being a time where those voices are featured explicitly and said, we need to hear from the leaders of tomorrow who happen to be leaders of today as well, teaching us how to move forward into a better world for all. So we're excited about that youth forum as a way to close us out for this 3-day conference. We've got about 90 minutes for the first part of our session today with a wonderful panel discussion led by Dr. Sandra Lubarsky. And then we'll have a break, a musical performance interlude, and then come back for a deep dive of small group conversations and really roll up our sleeves and continue the dialogue together. But with that, I'd like to introduce today's moderator, Dr. Sandra Lubarsky, who's spent most of her years as a university professor and an administrator, one of the first people in the United States to actually teach sustainability. She's now the co-founder of Flagstaff College, and serves as the president of that college, which is, I think I'd say the first, hopefully not the only for long, truly ecological civilization college in the United States. So it's a privilege to have her here to lead a conversation. Dr. Lubarsky, take it away.
Thanks very much, Andrew, and it's a pleasure to be with everyone here this evening. It's evening here in the Southwest, and I am honored to be moderating this session. We have 4 wonderful panelists, and I'm going to briefly introduce them to you, and then we'll just get started. If you've got questions for the panelists, go ahead and put them in the chat, and I'll try to make sure that we get those integrated into the conversation. Yang Pei holds a Master of Chinese Philosophy in the Department of Philosophy at Beijing University. He's currently a special researcher at the Institute of Religious and Cultural Studies at Peking University, a senior visiting scholar at the Center for Process Studies in the US, and a visiting researcher at Otani University in Japan. I'm going to just introduce each person here. Dr. Brian O'Donnell is a doctor of psychology. He has extensive training in various forms of psychotherapy and over 4 decades of experience as a private psychotherapist. He is highly regarded senior expert in psychotherapy and has lectured around the world. Dr. Wangshik Jang is a philosopher of religion and visiting professor at Methodist Theological Seminary. He studied systematic theology and philosophy of religion and has served as professor at Methodist University. Also as director of the Institute for Contemporary Philosophy of Religion and president of the Whitehead Society. And Reverend Dr. Dongwoo Lee is founder and the executive director of EcoCiv Korea. He also directs the Korea Project at the Center for Process Studies, and his latest book is called Imagining the Post-Pandemic Meta Church. So thank you and welcome to the 4 panelists. And my first question to them is that I thought we'd begin with a question about their own personal experience with transformation. So the question is, in what ways have you personally transformed your life in relation to what you know about the demands of ecological civilization and your understanding of the context in which we live, especially this ecological crisis and its many reverberations? So I thought we'd start with a personal reflection on your own kind of transformations that you've had in relation to thinking about ecological civilization. And I wonder, Brian, would you like to start, Dr. O'Donnell?
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you for including me in this powerful meeting. As you mentioned, I've been a psychotherapist for 48 years. I know I don't look like it, but it's been 48 years. But I'm relatively new to this work around ecological civilization and kind of a novice. And I want to share some epiphany that I had that's brought me more fully into this inquiry. I grew up on an island between the United States and Canada, a small island that was largely wooded. And as a child, I was pulled out of my house into the woods and to the lake. I spent hours communing with nature effortlessly. But in the last couple of years, I realized when I'm out in the woods, I'm not open to nature in the way that I was as a boy. I'm kind of shut down and caught up in my headquarters. And when I asked myself, why am I so closed off to the wonders of this beautiful nature? I realized I didn't want to feel the pain of the perils of what's happening to this earth. If I opened to nature, I'd also have to feel the losses of nature. So it was my unconscious way of trying to protect myself. So that epiphany has helped me open to realize that there's losses, species are losing, and even my own species may be lost. It's easier for me to worship a transcendent God than it has been to worship the God of this world, the God of this earth. And I want to change that.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Brian, for starting us off with such a moving and powerful narrative of your own life. I want to make a correction here that instead of Dr. Lee, we have Dr. Fackenthal, Jeremy Fackenthal, who will be one of our panelists. And I do want to say, Dongwoo, I listened to you this morning and your comments were just so beautiful and insightful that I hope everyone got a chance to hear you speak this morning. And you should jump in if you have something to add here. But but Jeremy is joining us. And Jeremy, what I know about you is that you're in addition to being trained in process philosophy, that you also are a filmmaker. And I wonder if you might say a little bit more about your background and then give us some reflection on your own transformation.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Sandra. I'm a documentary filmmaker. I've created a couple of short documentaries, and I'm working on a feature-length documentary about the life and work of critical theorist Walter Benjamin. I've also worked in the nonprofit realm, and of course know many of our friends in the process community. And I direct the Common Good International Film Festival, which was formerly known as the Whitehead Film Festival. In terms of personal transformation, as I was reflecting on the question, Sandra, two things sort of stood out to me. First, how I spend my time has become, I think, of vital importance, especially in the last few years. I have realized that I increasingly want to spend my time on things that are important to me, and spending my time working in areas related to ecological transformation, ecological civilization, and long-term sustainability are increasingly important. And so this takes various forms on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis, but consciously reflecting on how I'm spending my time and how I'm sort of orienting myself to time in the world is increasingly important. And second, I would say community has become a really vital part of my personal transformation. I know many of you either this morning or yesterday evening, depending on where you are in the world, got to hear from Valerie Vogenreiter in Germany. I've had an opportunity to join Valerie and a couple of others who are participating in this conference and several others from around the world in a really meaningful bi-weekly exchange. We call ourselves a practice group, and we get together for 2 hours every other week to provide peer support, engage in meditative practices and mindfulness, and just talk about how we sort of intentionally orient ourselves in the world. Having that community and also a community of friends in the place where I live and the place that I call home, I think are increasingly important to me. To staying grounded in that sort of community of practice is really helpful for my personal transformation.
Oh, what wonderful advice already to establish that kind of community of practice. Young Pei. Young Pei, would you like to speak on this? Let's see, you need to
大家好，我想跟大家分享一个好的消息哈。今天呢是按中国农历来算的话呢，是佛祖释迦牟尼的诞辰日啊，这是一个非常美好的日子啊。因为佛教的理念呢完全是生态主义的，所以说呢，在这样一个美好的日子里，我们可以更好的体会什么是生态主义它的理念。那么我的转变呢是来自于我对近现代西方工业革命以来历史的了解。以及我在中国改革开放和发展过程中和全球经济高速增长中的亲身体验。那么我小的时候呢，看过一部英国电影叫《雾都孤儿》，我还有一件美国品牌的风衣叫 London Fog。前些年呢，每当我在北京沙尘暴的天气时穿上这件风衣的时候呢，就会想起，从19世纪西方就已经大踏步的开始了环境污染和生态破坏的历程。后来西方又把其问题重重的这种强势文明下的工业和污染传递到世界各地，包括中国。像上个世纪50年代英国的工业气体排放导致的伦敦雾事件，日本的工业废水导致的水俣病这都导致了严重的环境生态灾难，在短时间内使很多人致死。那么我生活的城市呢，有的河流也曾经一度弥漫着一股臭味，沙尘暴呢也经常袭来。 那么这些都让我强烈的意识到，人类必须转变生产和生活方式，转变经济发展的模式。而这后面呢，更重要的是要转变思维方式，转变经济发展的这个模式啊，转变我们这个赖以生存的自然环境的态度和认知，否则我们整个地球人类呢，都要提早面临的灭顶之灾。因此呢，我们必须要向生态文明跨越，因为人类没有其他选择。好，谢谢。
Thank you.
谢谢。
Wangshik, tell me how you say your name, Dr.
Wangshik.
Young. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Yep. It's really a great honor to be here. And in terms of talking about myself, the transformation of self, or talking about the ecological issue, I think I want to be really honest, because I haven't been that sensitive, this kind of important issues such as ecological movement or ecological civilization, because as I am getting old, I have a strong tendency to avoid or to be reluctant to participate in a meeting or gathering that deal with really troublesome issues, because I'm just ordinary man, so I want to just avoid some troublemaking issues like that. There are a lot of gatherings and meetings that deal with troublesome issues such as issues of gender equality, issues of religious pluralism, like that. And many people have a strong tendency not to go there, because even though we have a long time discussion, it is really hard to solve the problem because issues are really complicated and there is no one answer, and everybody is just in fight and in conflict. And so it makes me sometimes really in trouble. So that's why I have been a little bit reluctant to participate in such a meeting. But nevertheless, as you can see, I am here today. I found myself invited and be seated at this kind of meeting. Why? Because I think this is really urgent and emergent. As you know, Korea is really a small country and 50 million people are living here. So there are so many problems related to pollution. And even though, these days, COVID-19 is winding down, however, we still, a lot of people should wear a mask because of pollution, because of fine dust and yellow dust, like that. And sometimes I'm annoyed by sorting out the garbages, like recycling garbages, and separate garbage collection is also really makes me really annoyed. However, it is a compelling issue. It is urgent. So I need to think about it and reconsider why I am really required to think about these issues like that. So even though I am, I have become a member of this EcoCiv movement and civilization, the reason why I'm here is that, I don't want to just get rid of my reluctance. I just want to be a little bit proactive in dealing with this issue. That's why I'm here.
I'm very glad you're here. And I am really grateful to you for the honesty in which you addressed us here. And it is hard, isn't it? And I think you were so again, straightforward and honest about how the desire is to avoid this kind of difficult self-examination, right? And the kind of practice that Jeremy is engaged in. I mean, it's something else we have to add to our lives, in addition to the other work that we've been doing. I rather than call on each of you, I want you to feel free to jump in. I'm going to pose the next question, and you choose whether you want to address it or not. How's that? So what do you think are the key barriers and challenges to transforming oneself and society toward an ecological civilization? What are those key barriers and challenges? And Wangshik, you already addressed some of those, but and how can they be overcome?
Do I go first?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. It seems to me that all those problems related to ecological crisis should be focused on, internal approach. What I'm saying is that, of course, I think you raised a question like there are many ways to refine or to transform our qualities and personalities and characteristics that tend to, prevent us from actively participating, in this kind of a movement. However, the most important thing is that, of course, there are many ways to deal with this issue. However, I want to focus on internal approach, which means that, there are a lot of qualities we have to define, we have to refine and transform. However, what I'm saying is that internal approach or internal process is much more focused on our consciousness, our self-awareness. I think that's should be the first point or starting point when we begin to deal with this issue, because our without our strong mindset, which is based on self-awareness or consciousness, I think it is really hard to make a decision. And our mindset is really a sandwich between, our emotion and at the same time our consciousness. However, as a kind of just a person, human, Homo sapiens, even though we are a Homo sapiens, it is quite highly likely to be controlled by or driven by our emotion, which is more connected with our self-interest. So the real issue is to how to form, how to construct ourselves to think more about consciousness. I think I'd like to call it conscientization, which is borrowed from South African English. Long time ago they were talking about a lot of issues in terms of social transformation. Anyway, so that's why conscientization, or making our inner self and put that a priority. I mean, priority on that inner process. I think that should be prioritized. And even though our social interaction is also important, and so internal approach and external approach should go hand in hand. And however, from my own perspective, I think in order to change our self, the conscientization or the self-awareness should go first.
Thank you. I am going to call on Brian, because I'd like to hear your response to that as a psychotherapist. And and also your opening remark about this protecting yourself from feeling too much. And if you, anyway, I'd like to hear your comments. Let's see. Brian, are you here?
I needed to unmute. Thank you. One of the primary barriers on the personal level are psychological factors, and a primary one is denial. We deny that this is happening. It's one of the most primitive defenses that we have psychologically. And there's two levels of denial in this issue. The first level of denial are those people that don't believe it's happening, that there isn't a crisis. And these people have sources of information that reinforce the denial. It's not really happening. The media that they tune into reinforce the denial. But there's another level of denial, which is even more problematic, which is disavowal. And that is the people that know that there is a crisis, but they look away anyways, because they don't want to change. They don't want to upset their life. They don't want to be uncomfortable. This is more dangerous and more pernicious. Another psychological factor and spiritual factor, I'm also a spiritual teacher as well as a psychologist, is numbness. We're numb to what's happening in the world. It's a little different flavor than denial. And the danger of numbness is the seedbed of evil. We can only commit evil if we're numb. If we're not numb, we feel we're connected to ourselves and other people in the world, and we can't be evil. We can't be cruel. We can't be avaricious. So numbness is also another essential factor and barrier. And then also what we've just been talking about, our resistance to change. We don't want to be uncomfortable. We don't want to have to make changes. I remember when I started taking this seriously, I had to look at my retirement funds. And I realized I didn't want to have money in fossil fuels anymore. But it meant risking that I would lose money. Was I going to give myself that permission to lose money because of my moral belief? And in fact, I did. I got rid of all my fossil fuels. And wonderfully, I found out that I haven't lost any money. It pays to be moral, to follow one's conscience. And just on the macro level, the barriers are deeply entrenched financial rewards for utilizing the scarce resources of this planet. So there needs to be a major restructuring and a revisioning of the corporate world so that we see beyond the human. We cherish and make sacred beyond the human, more than human.
Thank you so much, Brian, for that. Jeremy, I'd like to turn to you and wonder if you might add some thoughts, especially around the practices that you've taken up.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know if I can improve on what Brian said, but I think that what also strikes me is that we just have a sort of collective lack of imagination about the ability to live differently and still be happy. And I think, one of the things that I've been reflecting on in the last few weeks is the idea of emergence, which, if you take it seriously, means sort of letting go of control or giving in to the way that things might emerge or unfold, and that leaning into that practice or leaning into emergence and sort of giving oneself to that lack of control can actually open us up to creative potential and possibilities that we haven't imagined. And I think one of those certainly is the ability to live happy lives in a much simpler way, in a much more sustainable way over the long term.
I would like to come back to that, your note about the lack of imagination and the role that imagination plays in all of this. So hold that thought and let's hear what Young Pei has to say here.
好的，我是这样，我赞同前面几位先生的意见哈，就是说转向生态文明最大的障碍呢，我认为就是认识，就是我们的这个思维方式啊。具体而言，就是以现代性为特征的这种二元论的对象性的思维方式，这导致了人的贪欲的这个无限放大，那么人和人的疏离和争斗的放大，人与自然的对立和无休止的攫取和破坏的这种放大。所以呢，要想克服这些障碍呢，关键就是要放下我们根深蒂固的这个执念，转变我们的思维，那么提升我们的认识，那么真正找准每一个个体以及人类的真正的根本的福祉到底是什么。那么我认为呢，就是说有两个方面哈，一个是在形式上外在的改善啊，我认为这个改善呢是属于这个外在层面的，比如我们可以把污染的火力发电改为清洁的风力发电、太阳能发电，那么用电动汽车代替燃油汽车，那么这些呢都固然有利于环境和生态，但呢很多人从来他也不想啊，我们为什么需要这么多的能源？我们为什么要那么多的汽车？我们为什么把生活节奏搞得这么快啊？我在克莱蒙访学的时候曾经了解到，那么加州呢有充足的阳光啊，非常充足。很多人家里呢还要配备烘干机去烘干衣服，那么为什么一个家庭要有好几部车？那么这些都是对能源的极大浪费。那么这种文化呢，实际上是推崇过度的欲望和享受，以及弱肉强食。那么这个世界创造了这么多的物质财富，为什么那些亚洲、非洲和拉丁美洲还有那么多的人会那么贫穷，会挨饿，甚至会饿死？那么这种极度不均衡，也是由于某种文化的贪婪和冷漠造成的。那么所以呢，我认为呢，改善是必要的啊，但不是根本的，根本上还是要改革我们思维观念里的这种认知。那么如何认识这个世界，如何认识人自身，并把正确的认识传递出来，在人们之间达成一个共识。那么社会的转变，它不会是凭空发生的，而是源自于人内心的转变、观念的转变、思维的转变。那么这才是真正的改革和变革。所以我认为呢，就是关键的障碍就是来自人们的认知，一定要从自己的思维方式认识世界的态度和方式上来调整，这样才可以。谢谢大家。
Thank you. I'm interested to hear you speak, each of you, about the role that fear plays in all of this, in keeping us from transforming ourselves, from transforming the way we live, transforming our relations. And so to what extent is it that we're just fearful, or as Jeremy said, that we just can't imagine otherwise? And also then to talk about Young Pai, what you just said about letting go. So what are the ways to overcome fear and the ways of letting go? What are your recommendations for how we go about transforming ourselves?
I can start.
Great.
I feel that fear is endemic to the ego state, to being human. When we're born into this world, we're born separate. And fear is an inevitable byproduct of being a separate individual. And I agree with what he just said, that the true remedy for ecological civilization is a spiritual awakening, to understand that there's a fundamental unity amongst all of life. And I also wanted to follow up on what I said earlier about the barriers and how to overcome them. I feel like it's easy for me to scold myself or to scold other people for their denial. It's just, again, an automatic reflex. But I feel like what's really going to help and shift is to have compassion for the defenses that we have understanding and compassion for myself and for other people because of the deep fear that lives in us. And our defenses that come in and want to close down or take over. And the other factor, Sandra, and I feel like that will really help us in overcoming these barriers, is to focus on what we love that is more than human. When we can really love and appreciate the natural world and the particular aspects of it, whether it's trees or the water or fish or birds, if we can focus on what we love, that will be a powerful motivating force to fuel social activism and change. And it will be an antidote to fear.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And we are so uncomfortable talking about love, right? And talking about especially love in these contexts. We've really made love a very private emotion and a private experience. So I appreciate your courage in moving us to talk about love. Jeremy, your thoughts?
I have a couple of thoughts. Again, I think I would go back to community as a place where we can try things out, surrounded by hopefully love and support, and take those small steps into the frightening unknown, and be okay experiencing that fear, but doing it with others, and in a supportive community, I think is extremely important, whether that's a religious community, a spiritual community, just a network of friends or like-minded people. And then to Brian's last thought, just a sort of short personal anecdote. During COVID, I spent a lot of time on our back deck. We live in a populated neighborhood in San Diego. But what I began to notice for the first time, and I'm saying this as I look out the window that's right above my laptop screen, what I began to notice for the first time was the number and variety of birds that live in our neighborhood and visit our backyard. And I became particularly sort of obsessed with a sharp-shinned hawk, which I now see on a regular basis. It's fairly uncommon for Southern California, so sort of exciting for me to see. But I've seen this hawk sort of interact with other animals and birds in the backyard, and I've had the experience of it landing just about 6 feet beyond my window on the railing of our deck. And just the experience of watching that bird over the course of now, I suppose, 3 years, has awakened my awareness, I guess, to things in life that are non-human, but that certainly have subjectivity and are a vital part of this planet. It's beautiful to just sit and observe and watch them, and it feels like an honest relationship, between me and the bird, even though it's probably very much one-sided. But being able to spend the time to have those connections, I think, it does open us up to interconnection in a very deep and important way.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Again, beautifully said, and what a lovely example. And I hope that the relationship is not one directional.
Thank you. Me too.
Let's see, Wangshik.
Okay, talking about fear. again, I want to be really honest because I've been losing my self-confidence whenever I am overwhelmed by ecological enemies like, progressivism and technological civilization, too much focused on technological civilization and capitalism based on neoliberalism. Though all those things are, of course, our enemy or main enemy to wrestle with. However, the more important problem and what really matters to me as a fear is my strong tendency to lose self-confidence whenever I try to tackle those enemies. I think that's the first thing I have to deal with, because even though I have my own concept of self and my own concept of subjectivity like that. However, myself is affected by all those enemies' systems. So I've been constructed and systemized by all those ideologies of progressivism and technological civilization, and also neoliberalist capitalism like that. So there is no way but to be destined or doomed by those great power, which is another God. So my problem is how to get rid of this kind of fear. I think in the age of this kind of powerful gods that exist in this world, all we have to do is to be really, honest to me. I have a power, I have a potential, and I have many allies and friends and colleagues who can get together with me to fight against these powers. So I want to be really, I don't want to be really naive or reluctant anymore. So that's the first thing as a kind of strategy to adopt as a, more ecologically oriented person.
Thank you again for that. And I'm interested to hear, Young Pei, your response in honor of the Buddha and his birthday, and your reference to non-attachment.
好，谢谢。说到这个如何克服这个障碍哈，我想从个人的这个实践的角度来跟大家分享一下。那么呢，我们既然能够一起来参加这样一种生态文明的会议，说明我们都是生态文明的支持者。那么我们应该是呢一个生态文明的虔诚的守护者和实践者哈，在实践的过程中，那共同去创造这个生态文明这一种我们人类的一个新的希望，否则我们就是一个叶公好龙式的空谈者。那就我个人而言呢，我的首要任务呢是挖掘探索生态文明应该有什么样的这个思维和认知啊。我更多的呢是从东方文明，包括中国传统的儒家、道家，还有佛法的智慧中去研究体会古代的生态文明的智慧，那么希望呢将之转化为现代的语言，那么结合现实的一些问题啊，提供给世人。那么在生活中呢，比如说我本人力争从每一个能想到的细节去落实环保和生态生活的这样的生活方式，比如我和太太始终没有购买汽车，而是使用公共交通或者网约车啊。无论所在城市是否有要求，我们都一直在坚持垃圾分类，然后把厨余垃圾和可回收垃圾分开这个存放。那么我们没有条件像格里芬那样去造一个生态屋啊，但是家里只安装一部空调，而且基本上不开，尽量不去使用它。所以呢，我们要从个人的每个生活细节上去努力的去落实这个环保和生态文明啊。那么刚才大家又提到了爱，那么正好我想借这个机会呢，跟大家分享一下中国的传统文化是如何实现爱的啊。 那么中国的传统文化呢，向来认为呢是万物是一体，人和自然是一体。那么儒家讲呢，天人合一，人和人，人和天地都是一体的。那么要敬天、敬地、爱人和爱一切的存在物。那么道家呢讲道法自然，天地与我为一，万物与我并生。那么佛教讲众生平等，一正不二。这个一正不二呢，就是说人与所处的环境是一体的啊。那么六道里的众生呢，都曾互为父母亲人。那么在这样一种思想观念下，我们还会大肆去破坏自然，大肆戕害生命，残害动物吗？那么中国传统文化，不论哪一家哪一派呢，都是主张人是自然界的一部分，自然也不是外于人的存在物。人与自然间呢，并没有绝对的分歧和对立，而是相互联系、相互作用、相互影响。人要服从自然规律，那么人的自我实现与自然规律和宇宙的法则也是一致的。人生理想就是人与天地万物合为一体啊，从而达到一种完满和理想的这种境界。那么这就是中国人文精神的追求的最高的目标。那么人呢，也只有顺应天意，遵循自然规律，你才能国泰民安，才能天下太平。那么中国很早就有自己的生态文化。那么中国古人很早就认识到，要想利用生物资源，那么必须注意保护、合理开发，反对过度利用。那么在中国古代的很多文献里面，那既有丰富的保护环境的思想，也有严格执行环境保护的法令。那么还有把发展经济同环境保护结合起来，那么使两者呢互相促进的做法。那比如说，早在很早的先秦时代，那么古人就规定，春天不准砍伐树木，夏天不准捕鱼，不准捕杀幼兽和获取鸟蛋。那么要根据气候节令选择打猎、捕鸟、捕鱼、砍伐树木、烧荒的时间。那么禁止春天采集刚刚发芽的植物，禁止捕捉幼小的野兽，禁止毒杀鱼等举步圣举。那么中国人的人生理想幸福观呢，它也主要是追求一种乐天知命的安足的生活，而不是无限制的放大欲望、攫取自然、侵夺他人。那么举个例子啊，中国人发明了火药，但主要是用来制作鞭炮，创造欢乐和喜庆。那么西方人拿到中国火药配方，却用来大规模的制造杀人武器，制造枪炮，那以便更有力的去掠夺别人的土地和财富。那么这难道不是文化思维的差距吗？那么生态文明不就是要善待自然、善待动物、善待他人、善待万物吗？那么如果你能减少不必要的贪欲，努力去做到无我利他，学会尊重，努力创造人与自然、人和人的和谐共生，那么努力去建立人类共同体，这样就离生态文明就越来越近了。这就是我的分享，谢谢大家。
Thank you for that. I wonder if Wangshik, if you would speak, and everyone else think about this as well, about the sources for you. Are there traditions that you draw on for to find your strength and to find your path of transformation, similar to what Young Pei just detailed? What are the sources of your own life?
Of course, I belong to the East Asian tradition in which Buddhism and Confucianism and Taoism is really strong. And also Korea has its own indigenous religion and culture. All those culture is composed of many ideas that are focused on and related to the importance of nature. And human beings is a nature and a part of nature, a kind of a locus of interconnected or networking of the nature or the universe. We have learned such an idea from those religions and those East Asian culture, which was heavily influenced by Chinese religion and Indian religion and our Korean indigenous religions like that. And of course, as a philosopher who learned all those philosophy and religion from Western philosophy, as we know, the Alfred North Whitehead is also my foundation that can get fine water related to these ideas. And so my problem is my agenda is to make kind of translation from Western concept into East Asian concept, or sometimes East Asian concept into a Western concept. I think they are not colliding each other. Sometimes they have commonality and a lot of similarity between them. So I think we can get together, East and West, both get together to tackle this kind of ecological crisis and form ecological civilization together.
Great, thanks. Jeremy.
At the risk of being cliche, I think film is actually one of the sources that I tend to go to. I think in some cases, films, whether they're about the natural world or about processes in the natural world or not, can certainly open us up to new ideas and help us to reflect. I've done a couple of talks about a couple of particular films that have a sort of reflective tendency to them, and then I'm really interested these days in how films can intentionally invite reflection and reflection on personal transformation in the viewer. So I sort of personally been rocked in a sense by a couple of films that have done that.
I hope you'll tell us which films.
Sure. One of them is called, oh gosh. Well, now that I'm on the spot, of course, the names will just fly out of my head. Anthropocene is one documentary that was a part of a sort of trilogy of documentaries, but it just has this imagery about how humans have shaped and altered the landscape of the natural world that is hauntingly beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful, but it also causes you to just reflect on the very grotesque ways that humans have shaped the landscape of this world. Another is a film by Peter Sellers, who is a scholar at UCLA and also active in process studies and this wider community. That was a reflective piece done during COVID, reflecting on a Buddhist text and the impermanence of life. So it was shot entirely remotely with a dancer, a calligrapher, and a traditional Hindu vocalist, all sort of interacting with this Buddhist text that describes impermanence.
Brian, I'd like to hear you, and then Wangshik, I want to go back to you and all of you, if you've had just to speak a little bit more about the influence, the usefulness of process philosophy for you as a source of personal transformation as well. But Brian first.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm not familiar with process philosophy, so I wouldn't be able to answer that question with any understanding. The way that I resource myself, I think that was the question, is through stillness and silence, through meditation. And that's a way I get beyond the communal narrative, the stories that are told. When I can tap into something larger, what Jung calls the collective unconscious. When I can still myself enough, I can be restored and refreshed. And that's something I do every day. It's effortless effort. And the other thing I do on the opposite side of stillness is that I restore myself by running in the woods. I'm a runner, and I'm also a swimmer. So I swim in the lakes and pools, and it feels like I make myself more intimate with the natural world. And I also self-regulate when I'm running, and which has helped me balance myself and my work in the world and being an advocate for social change. So I combine stillness and movement. That's how I restore myself.
And are you, as a psychotherapist, do you draw on any particular sources for your for the work you do in transformative counseling?
Thank you for that question. I didn't mention it earlier, but I'm a teacher of a form of work called the path work, which is a contemporary spiritual discipline that draws on the wisdom of the ancient traditions along with depth psychology. It's a powerful blend of self-development. It's the most powerful blend of self-development that I've encountered. And I've been a student of esoteric Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism. And when I found the path work 40 years ago, I came home to what I feel like was my way, my method.
Can you point us to a book, a text that you would recommend?
I can point you to our website. It's called pathwork.org. And there's tremendous information on that website. Everything is free on the website to access all the teachings. Pathwork.org.
Thank you. I'm sorry. That is my dog who is not practicing stillness at this moment. And I apologize for that. Wangshik, back to you with that question about.
Yeah, I think there are too many ideas we can get from Whitehead and process thinking. And I'd like to talk about really technical terminology. I think everybody in this room is familiar with this term or concept, a simple location. I think this is really applicable to our ecological civilization movement. We have our own locus or our own place or our own territory or position or viewpoint or perspective. However, according to Whitehead, we tend to, abstract. We tend to have an abstraction from that locus. So it is called a simple location. Simple location is an abstraction. It's a kind of mistaken conception because a locus is not just a locus or sole locus or the only and one locus, which it is the locus which is related to in the networking of the universe. And so my place and my time is intensely complex and interconnected with all other places and times. I think that's really important point we can get from Whitehead, a simple location. But there is another tradition of process thought even in East Asian thought, as you already talked about. I think one is Huayan Buddhism. There is a great master by the name of, Wei-sang, who just went to China and learned about Huayan Buddhism. And he said that in Korean, I don't know how to translate that into English, but I have a really hard time at this moment. But anyway, he said that one dust can contain or contains 10 directions. 일미 진중 함시방. So one dust or one particle contains 10 directions. 10 directions is a kind of symbolic expression of the universe, because the universe have many directions. So even in one particle, one dust contains the universe. So that means one dust, one being, or one entity, or one locus is in networking of the universe, and it has, the universe in it. So I think this kind of process thinking is really useful when we think about the importance of transformation of ourselves, which is really focused on self-interest or just stubbornness like that.
Great, thank you. That's very helpful. And Jeremy, do you want to add anything to that from a process perspective?
I think I would just go back to the idea of imagination and imagining the infinite wealth of possibilities that do exist for theistic Whiteheadians. In the primordial nature of God, there are an infinite number of possibilities, some of which are certainly more relevant than others to each moment as it unfolds. But recognizing that infinite wealth of potentiality is available to us, and recognizing that we can be inspired to act in new and different ways, and to allow each moment to unfold into something different or novel. I think it is what inspires me from Whitehead.
We have a question here from Jay McDaniel. And Jay, I'm going to just go ahead and read this. And it's, what images do you all have of the kind of soul, person, self that you'd like to become? What qualities would that person have? And then Jay goes on to say, Bernard Loomer, a process philosopher, offers an image of a soul with size, a large soul. He puts it this way: by size, S-I-Z-E, I mean the stature of a person's soul, the range and depth of his love, his capacity for relationships. I mean the volume of life you can take into your being and still maintain your integrity and individuality. The intensity and variety of outlook you can entertain in the unity of your being without feeling defensive or insecure. Okay, and that's a wonderful quote that goes on from Bernard Loomer, but the question to you all is, what images do you have of the kind of person or self that you'd like to become? And what qualities would you then carry forward as that person? Thank you, Jay, for that question. And shall we start? Who would like to start? Brian, yes.
The image that came to mind immediately, maybe it's because I was born Catholic, even though I'm not Catholic anymore, is the image of Jesus Christ and his open heart. But fundamentally, what I feel like Christ brought to the world is the knowledge about needing to die so we can fully live. Christ wasn't here to create a kingdom. Christ was here to teach that we need to die to our ideas about ourselves. We need to die into the pain of life. We need to die to the moment so that we can be fully here, fully enabled to serve life. So the image of the cross is a beautiful, powerful message to me, not of masochism, but of giving oneself, surrendering fully to life on its own terms, so that we can both serve life and love life.
Thank you. Wangshik, do you have an image of yourself, of the person that you would like to be fully as this fully transformed person who is contributing to the establishment of eco-civilizations?
I think I am, I have in my mind a kind of person, but exactly he's not a person, but he's a person. I'm talking about Yahweh. Yahweh, Jehovah in English, in Korean, Yahuwah, Yahweh. He said that I am who I am. I think that means I'm not a person. I am a little bit someone or greater person who is greater being who is more than a person. So I'm not a being who can easily approach. I am just in a background and I am invisible and I'm almost impossible to perceive like that. So that's what he is or what God is. But at the same time, as we know, he became a person. He became a human being. So anyway, we can visualize, we can have a picture of who he is. And we can imagine, using our imagine, we can think about who he is. The reason why I am talking about this is that I think whenever we talk about ecological issue, the most important thing is how to open up ourselves, how to open ourselves up to everybody, up to universe, up to nature, up to small particles, up to small entities and subjectivities like that. And however, because they are too small, too invisible, too visible. That's why it is really hard to grasp or apprehend them because they are in the background. However, from our own perspective, we can approach that so we know who they are. Their face is going to come to play in front of us. What I'm saying is that this kind of image, somebody is back there in the background. However, I can approach to that being and to that entity. Then we can get together and have an interaction and to know each other. So we can find out, some small particles and non-entity and even margins and edges. I think all those beings and entities will be my partner to form this universe. I think that kind of idea is really important.
Thank you. It's really, I'm so grateful to you again for this, the courage of your answers, which this notion of being completely open, in spite of the fear that you spoke about, in spite of being overwhelmed by the context in which we live, that to really cultivate that kind of radical openness. Jeremy.
It's a great question from Jay. There's an Italian philosopher named Rosi Braidotti who is sort of conversant with Whitehead and process thought, who talks about becoming animal. And I think I'd like to be more like the hawk. I think I'd like to have the courage to stand up against the crows that are swooping in to attack me from time to time. I'd also like to be more adaptable, but also live closer to the land and recognize sort of intrinsic and intimate connection with the land in ways that I admit that I don't, always right now. So yeah, I'd like to be more like the hawk.
Here's the hawkness. Yes. And Young Tae, your thoughts. Who do you imagine yourself? What image of yourself do you aspire to? Okay, Young Tae, are you with us? Is that getting translated? Okay, I'm sorry. It would be wonderful to hear from Young Tae here. But I am going to move to this next question, which is, I just want to pick up on this word that's come up a couple times, and that's intimacy. And I'd love to hear how you cultivate, your advice on cultivating a renewed intimacy with the non-human world, with the land, with others, right, with other species, and with each other. I mean, it does seem you've used, I think I've heard it from all of you, the word intimacy as something that is part of this transformation that we need to do. So speak to that, would you? Brian, can we start with you?
I'll start. Well, the first thing I need to become intimate with is my body. My body is a microcosm of the macrocosm. My body is an earth, an ecosystem in and of itself. And I need to listen to it, become intimate with it, honor it, follow its directions. It's no easy task. Because the other thing I need to become intimate with, and again, I'm speaking from a psychological perspective, is I need to be intimate with uncomfortable feelings. I need to be intimate with grief. I need to be intimate with my anxiety, my helplessness, my despair. Can I make room for this? Can I allow this to move through me? And if I can, it will turn. It will open me up to be a more effective social activist if I can be intimate with all of my feelings.
Brian, thank you. I feel like I'd like to enlist as one of your clients. It's such a lovely and wonderful advice and a path that you would take us on.
Thank you.
Young Tae, are you back? Can we hear from you again? Okay. Hopefully you will return to us. Wangshik.
Well, as far as intimate issue is concerned, I think process thinking and ecological thinking is really, both of them are really fruitful or advantageous when we refine our concepts, I think. As we know, according to process thinking, our subjectivity is not just subjectivity, it is composed of others. Ourself is composed of others and affected by others. And also our subjectivity is surrounded by objectivity or objects, not just surrounded by them, but also composed of them or made up of them. And in these, postmodern society, there are a lot of philosophers and philosophies that, put emphasis on the problem of dichotomy between self and other, and subjectivity and objectivity like that. As Dr. O'Donnell already pointed out, our body and our self is composed of atomic or subjectivities, like entities like that. So, and also, as I said, the ecology, the Greek term of ecology is oikos, as we know, is a house or household. So a household of many members. So that means we are naturally, intimate and get together, and we are one, even though there are many members in our family, in our household. However, we should be united at the same time, as a one. I think that kind of, a metaphor is really useful.
Thank you. I just want, there's a message that Mr. Young Pei is having trouble with his internet, which I think we know, and I'm sorry that that's the case. Jeremy, your thoughts?
Yeah, on that question of intimacy, it sort of seems counterintuitive, but when I put a piece of glass or a camera and a lens between myself and my surroundings, I tend to take more notice of my surroundings and actually feel a more intimate connection because I'm looking much more closely. So I think it started during COVID, but something that I have tried to continue is just the practice of walking around with my camera, especially in the woods or the mountains, and noticing things that I otherwise would have missed. I think it gives me that deeper sense of connection, and I suppose I haven't reflected on this intentionally much, but I think it also causes me to think about myself in relation to the things that I'm observing, and opens up personal reflection as I'm sort of having those more intimate observations.
I want to turn to a question about sustaining hope and joy in the face of the difficulties that we are in, and the sources that you find for hope and joy, and that enable you to again become that person that you'd like to be, and to move towards the kind of transformations that we need, each of us to be able to do. And so that, oh, it looks like Young Pei is back. Are you able to get Young Pei?
现在可以听到吗？可以听到吗？ Hi.
Great. We're glad you're back. And I wonder, let's see.
可以哈，好的，好，
Young Pei,
那我分享一下哈，我是觉得哈，我的这个维持就是对生态文明的希望呢，主要是两方面，一方面呢是这个过程哲学和建设性后现代思想，还有一方面就是中国传统的古老的传统文化啊。那么我因为在这个过程中心嘛，作为访问学者是待过一段时间，也对过程哲学进行过一些研究哈。从我的认识上呢，概括呢就是过程哲学呢，和建设后现代思想它有一些标志性的特征啊，我想跟大家分享一下。我认为主要有六个方面哈。一是反对二元论啊，主张一个整体的有机论，认为宇宙呢是一个有生命的整体，处于一种流变的过程中啊，并且相互联系。那么世界的发展呢是一个开放的体系，一个不断演化的过程。那么第二点呢是在人与人的关系上，那么过程哲学呢摒弃激进的僵硬的个人主义，主张通过倡导主体间性啊和关系中的自我来消除人我之间的对立。那么第三呢是人与自然的关系上，主张人与自然之间呢是一种动态的平衡关系，并不是自然不是人的征服对象，人和自然应该和谐共处。因此呢， 过程哲学和建设性后现代思想呢主张生态主义。那么在方法上呢，那么这种学说呢主要有3点，那就是第一就是运用综合性的思维方式，第二是采取多元主义，主张对话和互补。那么第3呢是不应简单的，他强调呢不应该简单的否定现代性，而是要着眼于阳气和去质。那么尽管我的概括呢不一定十分准确，但呢以上的大致可以概括建设性后现代思想呢和生态文明的最基本的这样一些特征了。那么同时呢，科布博士呢也曾经表示，过程哲学、建设性后现代主义与中国传统文化有很多相通之处。那么确实，中国传统文化和宗教中众多的这个思想元素呢，都具有浓厚的后现代品格。那么可以说呢，是当代建设性后现代思想和生态文明建设取之不尽的精神养料和思想的宝库。那么我热爱并相信我们中国古老的传统文化呢，蕴含着宇宙人生的真理，那么能把我们人类呢引向真正的自由和超越。那么儒家呢教给我们人与人相处之道，以及对天地自然的敬畏；道家呢教给我们呢人与自然和谐的相处之道，以及天地万物的和谐统一。那么佛家呢教给我们呢人的自己的身心和谐之道，那么教给我们缘起性空、众生平等、慈悲无我这样的超越的智慧，那么真正打破人的局限，而走向彻底的觉悟解脱。那么我要把这些理念呢和智慧呢传递给他人和所有的需要的人，包括在座的各位和你们的同胞、朋友、家人，那么促进大家一起努力去建设生态文明，那么共同努力的建设一个更好的能让我们身心自在的人类的家园。那么我认为这2方面就是中国传统文化思想理念与过程哲学和建设性后现代思想的结合，将足以为生态文明提供有力的思想资源和思想武器。那么这将是未来人类生态新文明的伟大的力量源泉，也是我个人的力量源泉。那么对此我充满希望。那么在此呢，因为科布博士也在场啊，我向他致以崇高的敬意，我们这位当代的生态圣贤，谢谢大家。
Thank you. We're very glad that you're back and that and to hear your words here. And now the last question that I pose, and then we'll end with this question actually, is the question about the role of joy and hope in your own path of transformation, and where you find it, how it is actually part of the transformative work that you are doing. And
Well,
I think, yeah, go ahead, Brian.
I'll start again. Václav Havel, who was the Czech Republic president, and also Nobel Prize winner, had a wonderful view about hope that feels like it's instructive to me. And he talked about not focusing on the outcome of whatever action or commitment you have, but to focus on the right next step. If you're climbing a mountain and you look at the summit, it can be very, very enervating. It can take your energy away. But if you walk and see what is the next step on the mountain, and can I give my best to this next step, I think it engenders hope. And in terms of joy, I'm kind of a one-trick pony here, as you probably hear, but I think joy is a direct function of our capacity to feel pain. If we can't allow pain, we block true joy. And so a benign circle ensues in my experience. The more that we can let ourselves feel the pain of this world, the helplessness, the fear, the healthy anger, the more that we can feel this pain move through us, it enlarges us. And then we can feel joy. And the more joy that we can feel, it strengthens us to feel even more pain. We become more and more expansive and a holding space for what needs to be moved in the world and through us. So those are my thoughts on hope and joy.
Thank you again, beautifully put. Next, who would like to go next? Okay, then Jeremy, why don't we hand the stage to you?
In terms of hope, I think I go back to a sense of community. I've had the privilege of working in a small organization surrounded by people who are passionate about finding sustainable pathways and thinking about ecological civilization. I'm fortunate enough to be a part of a practice group of like-minded individuals, some of whom are climate scientists, others are working on societal transformation, but just being surrounded by those individuals and hearing their stories and sharing their struggles. So both the pain and the joy, as Brian said, gives me hope. And in terms of joy, I have a couple of friends in San Diego who helped me to balance serious work with serious play, so to speak. So just spending time with friends, laughing, finding, being silly together and finding things that just bring us, those tiny little joys throughout our day. It balances me out in a really meaningful way.
Great, thanks. Wangshik.
Yep. I think my source of joy is ecological movement. In short, in Korea, as we know, politics are really complicated and they're really so powerful. I think there are two kinds of politics, and wrong kinds of politics, and negative politics, and positive and good kind of politics. Good kind of politics should replace a wrong kind of politics. I think in Korean case, especially, there are many wrong kind of politics, which is based on, as I said, capitalism, which is related to neoliberalism, or I'm not saying that it is totally an absolute evil. No, that's not my point. However, it tends to lead us to wrong kind of policy. Politics. That's why we need some, solidarity, which push it forward. Good kind of politics. I think this is a good movement. Ecological civilization. We can get together and we can form kind of allies. I think allies is really different from friends. Allies is composed of diversity of people and groups. Even though they have different voices and different backgrounds, they can get together and they can have a same goal and same intention and same agenda, and we can push forward toward that goal, even though we are different from one another. So that's why we can call it allies. I think this kind of allies will be able to have the really great potential to be really integral or faithful or committed to the ecological civilization, finally.
I'm glad you have joyful allies too, who give you hope. That's an important part of this work. Young Pei. Young Pei, are you with us? Can share your thoughts on hope?
我在，能听得到吗？哎，你好，我刚才非常赞同这个韩国的这位教授他的发言哈。是的，我是觉得我们经常要问哈，就这个我们现处的这个世界体系，这个发展方式合理吗？它能够持续吗？我们为什么不能从这样一个桎梏中解脱出来呢？我们为什么不能转变我们的思维和认识呢？ 那么，尽管这个世界的控制者很大程度不想让我们解脱出来，但我们至少要想出来，并为之努力。我们应该不断的坚持我们的信念啊。那么，我们主要的思想的支撑呢，就是我们的过程哲学和我们传统的东方的古老的思想。那么，这需要我们大家在未来的时间呢，更好的、更深入的去研究、挖掘和了解。好，这就是我的分享，谢谢。
Thank you. I just want to first thank the four of you for speaking so honestly and thoughtfully about self-transformation, about a topic that we often don't speak about publicly. And part of the practice, I think, of transformation is to have these kinds of public conversations. So thank you. And this conference in itself is a practice of self-transformation and, of course, of communal transformation. And I'm grateful to the people who have made this conference possible, those people who were named earlier, for bringing us together. But we are going to close this session, and I'm going to turn this back to Andrew, who will tell us what is next on the agenda.
Great. Thank you, Sandra, and thank you to all of our panelists. We are actually going to transition now from our panel dialogue, have a wonderful music presentation that will add some art and beauty and creativity into our lives, which we know is very transformative. And then a short break, and then we'll come back and do the small group discussions as we talked about before. So with that, Meijun, if you could please play that video. Make sure you can share screen. Dr. Fawn, would you like to say a few words about this video, the video we're about to watch in this special piece?
Okay, thank you. 谢谢山佐还有我们的4位嘉宾哈，他们今天的分享非常棒哈。一个好消息呢，我现在要说的是，我们今天的这场论坛，我们的现场直播，在百度上的现场直播，现在已经达到了5103人哈，同时进行的。好，那么谢谢大家哈。然后呢，我今天要分享给大家的这首歌呢，就是咱们国内的第一部哈，这个就说强调 focus on the global warming 的这么一个爱情故事的片子哈，里面的一个推广曲啊。今天呢，我也邀请了他们的那个就是制片导演上来。现在呢，我就先放这首歌，然后呢放完之后呢，我会邀请我们的制片呢跟我们分享一下他的初衷为什么要就是说基本上把自己搞破产了，要去拍这部片子。OK。
阴暗的雾霾掩住圣洁的灵，贪婪的双手玷污美丽容颜，欲望 眼，蓝眼的苦痛，我们都已经看见。Sorry， 妈妈，请原谅你的孩子。Sorry， 妈妈，让我依偎在你怀里。Sorry， 妈妈，请放过我的无知。Sorry， 妈妈，让我能与你一起呼吸。狼狈的冰雪化成汹涌的浪，葱郁的大地弥漫滚滚硝烟，灰色的苍穹笼罩永别的哀伤，无边的海洋汇成荒芜的牧场。Sorry， 妈妈，请原谅你的孩子。Sorry， 妈妈，让我依偎在你怀里。Sorry， 妈妈，请放过我的无知。Sorry， 妈妈，让我能与你一起呼吸。无尽的轮回，亘古的沧桑，卑微的尘土，凭什么阻挡？劫难要来临，谁能够抵挡？别在最后一刻才对你呼喊。Sorry， 妈妈，请原谅你的孩子。Sorry， 妈妈，让我依偎在你怀里。Sorry， 妈妈，请放过我的无知。Sorry， 妈妈，让我能与你一起呼吸。请让我永远依偎在你怀里。
抱歉啊，我也不知道是出了什么问题，因为在我的屏幕上，这是一个 video，在我的屏幕上是可以看到这个画面和这个就是说中英文的这个字幕的哈。但是为了，因为我也不知道是哪里出了问题，就先这么放。好，下面呢，我们请这个《冰山之恋》的这个导演和制片李彦波先生跟我们分享几句他为什么穷尽他的个人财产来拍这部片子。李先生，你在吗 ？Hello， OK， let me see， 我看着，李先生你在吗？我看到你了。can you see？ 你可以说
好，
李先生，你呢？刚才的问题你听到了吧？
我听到了。
OK， 你能分享一下你拍这部片子的初衷和一个简短的故事吗？
好的今天呢，首先非常高兴能参加这个会议跟那么多志同道合的世界各地的朋友、各个老师在分享我们对于未来的一个愿景，非常开心。那么我是《冰川之恋》的编剧、导演和总制片人，我叫李彦波。我跟大家介绍一下我创作这部电影的一个初衷吧。 因为我是一名户外运动的发烧友，经常去爬山啊，登冰川这些。因为我在累积10几年的这个户外活动当中，我就发现冰川的消融、冰川的消退非常非常明显，在同样的季节、同样的冰川地点的时候，所以我就意识到这个全球变暖问题真的就是迫在眉睫。我们这一代人，我们这一辈人是完完全全能感受到的。加上近10年来，全球各地的极端天气的频发，也更加印证了这点。所以当时我就决定要创作这样一个题材的电影。我们这个电影的一个故事呢，讲的是，一个大都市里面的一个优质的女性白领的，身边有非常多的追求者。那么在一次她在一次冰川徒步活动中呢，就是跟自然保护区的一位环境监测员相识相爱，并且对全球变暖问题产生了共识。然后呢，他就舍弃了繁华的大都市的生活，去到寻找自己的爱情，共同奔赴环保的事业的这么一个故事啊。然后呢，我们这部片子还跟中华环境保护基金会共同发起了一个活动，叫万年冰川公益项目的活动。也就是说，我们每卖一张票，捐1块钱给中华环境保护基金会，那么这些费用今后是用于长期的来为这个低碳环保的来做公益宣传，这么一个项目。然后呢，冰川之恋这个片子，我认为它最大的意义就是说，我们力图为全球变暖问题来寻找一个解决的方案，来尝试的来思考这个问题。那么我作为这个片子的主创来讲，我所想到的那个解决之道了。我认为是在我们中国的传统文化上的几个点啊，一个是我们传统文化倡导的是天人合一，人与自然要和谐的发展，人要不断运用提升科学智慧去探寻天地万物运行的规律，找寻到最适合我们人类生存发展之道。然后我这部电影里面呢，还是把中国那个佛教的教义也融入进来了，就是人对天地对万物要保持一份敬畏之心，而不是任由这种欲望，人的物欲无限制的去延伸，那么这个世界永远不可能美好。让我们每个人心中充满爱，世界才会美好。那么我这个片子的点题的一句话就叫唯有爱可以拯救世界啊。我的分享完了，谢谢。
好的，谢谢倪导哈。今天呢，我们这个怀特海电影节的主管 Jeremy 呢，他也在这里。我想他肯定会对你的这个《冰山之恋》这部片子感兴趣的啊。如果他认可的话，我们可以把你的片子推荐给我们的怀特海电影节。
哦，太好了，太好了，谢谢。
所以谢谢你啊，你今天能来哈。
谢谢你，
我们觉得我们是在一个共同体里面，我们以后可以相互的支持奔向一个同一个方向啊。
好的，太好了啊。
好，谢谢谢谢。
这
个
好的
Angel 我们现在是休息的时间吧，然后我们休息结束之后呢，是我们大家呢分会在对今天的4位嘉宾的这个内容进行回应和发挥，是吧？大概什么时候咱们回来呢
Yeah, let's do like 10-minute break, I think, and we'll come back, which is 8:10 p.m. Los Angeles time, and continue to have conversation for 1 more hour, and then those of us who live in California time could go to sleep, and those in China and Korea time could go on a hike and experience nature or something. So, but 10 minutes.
Yeah, 咱们美国东部的朋友们，可能他们那边已经是晚上的11点钟了 所以他们可能都要上床了啊。那么我们等休息结束之后啊，大家先放松放松，做做气功啊，做做yoga or meditation， 然后我们再回来啊，畅所欲言，来的对今天的主题呢，做我们自己的一个发挥啊，和对嘉宾的一个回应。好，谢谢大家啊，10分钟见啊，谢谢。
不要，你玩了不要？招着我。